Hey, hope you're doing well. Glad you decided to watch this video before you take your quiz there. And I hope this helps you out a little bit going over some of the more tough problems on the homework. You definitely want to show work for them and not just randomly guess stuff. Because if you do randomly guess stuff, you won't have too much success on this quiz, I'll tell you that much. But anyhow, so we're going to solve this equation. We have to use the distributive property twice, actually, first. All right. Remember the steps here. Let me just quickly summarize them. All right, you want to distribute first on each side of the equation. Combine like terms on each side separately. All right. And so you're simplifying both sides first. That's the general idea. Simplify both sides first. And then you want to move all your variables to the same side, and then you undo plus or minus, the good old two-step undo multiplication and division. All right, so yeah, you basically are forming a two-step by doing simplifying of each side and moving your variables to one side first. All right, so let's go ahead and do this one here. Distributing, there is a minus sign here. So this minus sign is like multiplying by a -1, so you have to distribute that. Oops. Boop. All right, let me type this out. It'll be easier for you and me here. All right, hopefully it'll be easier. All right, so you'd have 38 minus 2c. Now when you distribute the -1 times 3, that becomes a -3, okay? So make sure that minus sign gets distributed. That's critical. All right, on the other side, you have 2c plus 2 times 5 is 10, plus an additional c. Okay, we're still on step 1 here. Okay, we got to combine like terms on each side separately first. So you can see that you have two numbers here that you can combine. Just combine those two constants. 38 minus 3 is 35, minus 2c. And then over here, you can combine 2c and c. 2c plus c is 3c plus 10. All right, after that, you're going to move your variables from one side to the other. So you could either subtract 3c, but if you do that, you get a negative. So I'm going to add 2c on each side instead. All right, so now we're on to the two-step steps here. All right, so we have 35 equals 5c plus 10. Subtract 10, you get 25 equals 5c. Subtract 10 from both sides, I should have said, but okay. And then you divide both sides by 5, so you have 5 equals c. So those were just the two steps. The last two steps. I didn't actually show you what I did to both sides, but I did the two steps. All right, so hopefully that helps you. Remember, you can substitute your answer to check it. So, you just plug your answer back in for these c's, and you should get the same number on both sides of the equal sign. All right. This one here, this one was a bit of a challenging one because there's some fractions, and it does say use the distributive property to solve. I'm going to show you how to do it without the distributive property, then I'll do it with. Okay, so doing it without the distributive property, you need to have a common denominator, which is 15. So let's go ahead and change the denominator to be 15. Now, before we do that, okay, let me show you what's going to happen here. You could combine these two terms first, and let's do that, maybe. Yeah, why not? Okay, so we're going to take 5x over 3, and this minus x, if we want to combine it with it, we need a common denominator. So we can make it into 15 over 15, but since I'm just combining it with this one, I'm going to make it into 3 over 3. All right. So we have 5/3 x minus 3 over 3x equals x over 15, which x over 15 you could write as 1/15 x minus 6/5. All right, next thing, let's combine these two like terms. 5/3 x minus 3/3 x. even though this x is on the top, you can always pull it out in front of the fraction. Okay, so really you could write this as 5/3 x. Okay, so the x on top could go out in front. So this would just be 5 minus 3 is 2/3 x equals 1/15 x minus 6/5. All right. So when you're doing this one, you have tons and tons of fractions to work with if you're doing it this way. All right. Next thing you need to do is move the variables from one side to the other, but you can't do that when the denominators are different. So like I said, we're going to make our common denominator of 15. So 2/3, if you multiply the top by 5 and the bottom by 5, you need to multiply by 5 because you want to make it into 15. You'll end up with 10/15 x. Okay, and then it's equal to 1/15 x minus 6/5. Okay, and then you want to move that 1/15 to the other side. So you'll have 9/15 x because you'll be subtracting 1/15 from both sides of the equation equals negative 6/5. And then you're still working with these fractions. You need to undo this multiplication of a fraction by multiplying by the reciprocal. So you'd multiply both sides by 15/9. All right, and then things are going to cancel nicely here. The 5 and the 15 go, 5 divides away, and the 15 becomes a 3. The 6, you could divide it by 3, is 2. The 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then all of this actually just becomes negative 2. Okay, once you cancel all that stuff out. You could have multiplied straight across. You would have gotten negative 90 over 45 if you would have not canceled anything. And that reduces to negative 2 as well. Okay, so this is kind of hard, this way to do it. The other way is a little tricky, but I think it's easier once you kind of get the trick down. So let me show you the other way to do this problem, and that's with the distributive property. All right, and then if you looked at the helps, they would have told you to do it this way. Okay, so what the distributive property allows you to do is cancel out all the fractions. So you want to figure out a multiple that will cancel out all the fractions. And that is the least common denominator, essentially. But instead of making the bottoms the same, you're going to be multiplying by that. So the least common multiple is 15. All right, so we're going to be multiplying both sides of the equation, and using the distributive property, we're going to be multiplying both sides by 15. All right, so this 15 will get distributed then, and then we'll cancel out those denominators. So it'd be 15 times the first fraction, and then 15 times x as well. Okay, so that's actually minus 15x. And likewise over here, it'd be 15 times the first fraction you see, which is x over 15, minus 15 times that other fraction, 6/5. Okay, so there you go. That's using the distributive property to solve it. Now let's actually cancel some stuff out here. All right, so this 3 cancels with the 15. This 15 becomes a 5. So I have 25x minus 15x, like so. Over here, the 15 and the 15 cancels, so I just have x. Over on this side, I have the 5 and the 15. You can cancel out the 5, that becomes a 3. So this becomes a minus 18. All right, and then you basically are going to combine like terms. 25 minus 15 is 10x. Okay, so remember you're following the same steps as right here, okay, in case you got lost there. All right, so combine like terms, move your variables to one side. So I want to get rid of this x on this side, so I'm going to have to subtract it. That's a minus sign. So I have 9x, sorry about that, 9x equals negative 18. And guess what? If you divide by 9, you get the same answer. X equals negative 2. All right, so that's just another way to do it. Sorry it's blending together there, but yep. The key is to clear the fractions with this method, and then it's just like any other equation with variables on both sides. All right, one more problem to go over here. This one was from Friday last week. So you basically have the length of a postage stamp, and they're telling you it's 4 1/4 millimeters longer than its width. They give you the perimeter. You're trying to figure out the length and width of the postage stamp, essentially. All right, so remember, for rectangles, this is the formula for perimeter. Perimeter is the distance around it, okay? The key here is you don't want to use both W and L. You want to use the relationship between W and L, which is said right here. Okay, W is 4 1/4 meters longer than the width. Okay, if it's longer than it, you are adding 4 1/4 to the width to give you the length, okay? So and then you have that twice because you have two sides here. All right, and that's why in the formula you have 2L. And if you notice here, this is the equation they want you to use, 2 times the length, which is written in terms of the width. Okay, and then you have the 2 W's here for the 2 widths. Okay, and then if you don't want to use this formula, I mean, you could just think about combining like terms here. All right, and then combining these two numbers. It'd probably be actually easier to do it this way. All right, so let's go ahead and distribute here. 2W, and then that's not distributing, but here you have 2 times W. This is where you're distributing. All right, 2 times 4 1/4. Okay, now usually when you distribute, you want to make mixed numbers improper fractions, but if you're just multiplying by 2, just think in your head, what is doubling 4 1/4? If I double 4 1/4, that is 8, and if you double a fourth, that's a half. Okay, so a fourth and a fourth makes 2/4, which is equal to a half. So this becomes 8 1/2. All right, when you distribute. That is probably the easier way to do it. All right. And the other thing is, now since we made this into a half, we don't have to change our denominators, and it becomes a lot easier when we go and we're going to combine like terms next, which we should always do before we do our anything else. Try to simplify each side a little bit more. Okay, and then the next step would be move all the variables from one side to the other, but we already have all of them on one side, so we're just doing a two-step equation here. All right, and our denominators are the same, which is nice, so we can simply add and subtract them. All right, so if you take 124 1/2 and you minus 8 1/2, the 2 halves go away, and so you just have 124 minus 8, okay, which is 116. So 4W is equal to 116. Okay, so then one more step, you divide both sides by 4, and 4 goes into 116, how many times? Let me think here. That'd be 2, 36, so I think it's 29 times. All right, so the width is 29. Okay, what is the width of the postage stamp? 29 millimeters. Let's make sure to go back and answer the question. It also says, what is the length of the postage stamp? All right, well, the length is going to be W plus 4 1/4. So you take 29 plus 4 1/4 to get the length. All right, which is equal to 33 1/4 millimeters. So that's about it for that one. I tried to do all the shortcuts I could on it and didn't make anything improper. But generally speaking, when you're multiplying a whole number times a mixed number, you want to make the mixed number into an improper fraction first, like make this into 17/4. All right, but since you're just doubling it here, it's easier to do it mentally. Anyhow, I hope that helped you guys, and I wish you well on your quiz today. Have a great day, guys. God bless. Bye-bye.